Today, I have a story to tell. A story entitled The Saga of Engineer vs. Genius Cat, aka Booties and the Brain Scale. A story of trying to use engineering to solve a common problem experienced by many multi-pet households, and discovering that animal brains, when sufficiently motivated, can figure things out that they have no technical understanding of. Now to present the cast of the story. First, we have Brains. Brains is our original cat baby, belonging to Michelle before we were even married. She was quite content to be the only child and sole recipient of all our affection. She was thin, but healthy middle-aged cat who would self-regulate in her consumption of cat kibble, so we would just leave the bowl out for her to graze as she felt like it. As an unrelated piece of trivia, it is true that cats are afraid of cucumbers. Myth confirmed. Now to introduce the next character, Booties. In 2018, we adopted Booties, or Boots for short. After some initial friction, Boots and Brains managed to get along and became adorable bonded sisters. There's just one problem. Boots is not a self-regulating eater. She is a chonk, which means that any available edibles were immediately wolfed down, including her sisters. We discovered very quickly that the custom of leaving the food out for Brains all day was no longer going to be an option. We were gone at work all day. What are we supposed to do other than lock them in separate rooms while we're gone? Now enter the third character. I'm an engineer. When there's no existing solution for a problem out there, I say, build one yourself. Thus began the quest to figure out how to keep Boots out of Brains' food. First we thought, well, Brains is smaller and a little more agile. Maybe we could put the food up on a shelf, or put it through a hole that only she could squeeze through. But Brains already has trouble keeping on enough weight. Do we really want to make her go through an American Ninja Warrior course in order to get her meals? No. So I came up with a better idea. Technology. Build a feeder that has a lid that only will open for Brains and will not open for Boots. So it needed some way to distinguish between the two of them. And the most obvious way to do this, between the two cats, was weight. So enter the brain scale. The concept went like this. Inside the device is a bowl of food in a closed container. When some cat comes to eat, they would have to step on the scale to get to the bowl. The device weighs the cat, and if the weight matches Brains, the lid opens and lets her eat. Otherwise, that bowl stays shut. Although I am a software engineer and I know how to use microprocessors, writing software for a scale seemed a little like overkill. So I decided to try to build all of this initially with just analog electronics. The result was this. Here's how it works. You can see I've got these sensors, which I cut off from a Walmart bathroom scale, and they are wired up inside to this measurement circuitry, and that is then connected to this solenoid, which, through some dowels, is affixed to this lid. So now, if I put about 7 pounds on here, the weight of Brains, the lid will open and she can get to her food bowl. Now if I move it up to 11 pounds, the weight of Boots, the lid closes and no food for you. Now let's see it in real life action. Brains walks over, she jumps on it, and it opens for her. She learned how to use it pretty quickly. Now, Boots tries to jump on and is denied. The brain scale worked. This seemed like a great system that allowed us to leave the house, go to work, and leave Brains' food out without worrying about whether it would get consumed. But this is not the end of the story. Boots the food monster was not happy with this system. So she grew some extra brain cells and manifested a new identity that we did not know existed before. Boots the mad scientist. This little menace figured out that she could reach up and put her front paws on the scale, balancing delicately until she had placed the right ratio of her weight onto it, and the lid opens. Then she shoves her face in and gobbles down the food, with the lid attempted to close on her head. So I implemented a countermeasure by putting the scale on top of a box that she couldn't reach from the floor. No matter. She just stretched herself even longer, took the side route over the guardrails, and stuck her face in. Okay, So I built a taller platform that she definitely could not reach from the floor from any direction. Well, guess what? She figured out how to stand on her tippy toes, pull on the edge of the platform until the lid opened, then leap up and somehow get her nose under the lid before it closed. Or maybe on the rebound. I still don't know exactly how she did it, which is kind of frightening. But when you think about it, she doesn't have a job. She has nothing better to do all day than practice over and over and over again, trying to figure out how to get into this thing. And eventually she just figured it out. So I made a modification to the circuitry that was more effective at keeping her from exploiting this vulnerability. But eventually, by aggressive persistence, she just ripped the lid apart and got in. This is when I realized I was fighting a losing battle, and Boots was gaining weight from the spoils of her conquests. But now we will introduce a new character to the story, Beans, also known as Spicy Cat. We adopted her around this time, and expected to have the same problem of Boots rating her dish as well. I needed to build another version of the brain scale, and this one needed to be... Hi. Beans is much closer in weight to Boots, so it needed to be a much more accurate measurement system, and it also needed to be smarter about figuring out when the wrong cat is trying to intrude. I built better sensors this time, ordering more sensitive load cells and amplifier chips with analog to digital converters. The lid opens rotationally and is attached to a motor. I also have a weight sensor under here that allows it to weigh the amount of food in the dish. Most importantly, the measurement and the lid are controlled by software running on an Arduino board. This let me create a more sophisticated algorithm that could tell the difference between a lightweight cat standing on the scale and a heavy cat attempting to fool it with part of its weight. Because of that, when fully assembled, the scale could sit flat on the floor and doesn't need to be elevated up on a platform as a countermeasure. I got version 2 fully built and started using it with Beans, and it worked. Pretty soon, we switched over to using it as Brains feeder, because Boots had pretty effectively figured out version 1. We got Beans a different feeder, which I'll talk about later. Another benefit of the feeder being run by software is that I could hook it up to a computer and see the measurements live on a screen, with a Python script running to interface with the Arduino. All of this got recorded and processed so I could go back and track Brains' weight and the amount of food she was eating over time. At one point, we thought we noticed her starting to lose weight, so I created this chart that plotted her food consumption and weight over the period of a full year, which showed that despite her eating levels staying about the same, she had lost almost 1/3 of a pound. We brought that into the vet and she was like, "Where did you get that?" This invention was turning into more than a selective feeder. It was really a health tracking tool. We dreamed briefly about starting a business manufacturing and selling these because a lot of multi-pet owners have this same problem. Then we remembered I was working full-time and doing a master's degree and quickly put that idea on the shelf. And the victory I had thought I'd won over the mad scientist was premature. Have you ever seen that scene in Jurassic Park with the velociraptors in their paddock and how they're methodically testing the fence to see where there might be weak points? Well, the food monster was still at work, methodically testing and trying the system dozens of times a day. Until finally, she figured out my software. She learned how to apply a more accurate amount of pressure without triggering the intrusion detection, and shoved her face in the bowl as the lid repeatedly tried to close on her head. Thus continued the battle of wits. I would update my software with a more sophisticated algorithm for detecting and keeping her out.
Oh, she didn't make it that time.
It would work for a little while, and then she got better at fooling it and got in again. Eventually, we settled into a tenuous peace agreement where Boots got in maybe a couple times a week, but not enough for her to keep gaining weight. That held for a little while, until finally the gearbox and the motor got fatigued from trying to shove the lid closed against her face, and busted. Such was the end of Brainscale version 2. Running out of ideas and time, I mustered my best software engineer skills and navigated to Amazon.com. There's a product called the SureFeed Pet Feeder that serves about the same purpose as the Brainscale, but it uses a microchip instead of their weight to figure out which cat is trying to get in. Since nearly all cats are chipped, this is a pretty much foolproof method of distinguishing the right animal. And this lid is a hard plastic, so it presses firmly down against the bowl, and there's pretty much no chance of someone breaking into it. We bought 2 of these, one for Brains and one for Beans, and they've been effective feeders ever since. Well, mostly. The mad scientist was still at work, and quickly figured out that she could simply butt Brains out of the way and stick her head in the dish while the lid was open, and then the lid wouldn't close once she already is in. So I had to make my own mods, namely building a box around the feeder that 2 cats could not fit into simultaneously. Yes, that is a Cybertruck. We bought her a Cybertruck for her 16th birthday, and made her a driver's license. Insanity officially achieved. Sadly, Brains passed away in January of this year, and the Brainscales are officially retired. This video is in honor of her. The fluffy menace has moved on from food raiding and is finding all kinds of new ways to cause trouble. Just ask every plant that we've tried to bring into this house. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, bye-bye.